book. If you can call me back, give my mobile. Thank you. Please, hello, can you call me about your book? Thank you. Hello, hi, good afternoon. If you can call me, I'm the subject of your book. Thank you.
At around 1 o'clock, Ashraf Marwan, an Egyptian super spy, fell off the balcony in Carlton Terrace, central London. The medics were directed to a small rose garden. He uttered a few words and he died. When I was told, my mind was racing. I asked myself, was he pushed? Did he jump? The rumor was, especially in Egypt, that it was not an accident, it was a murder. In 1948, in Palestine, Jews declared State of Israel. On the next day, Egypt and the Arab neighbors invaded. So, for years, Israel and Egypt hated each other. And Ashraf Marwan was one of the greatest modern spies at the center of the conflict. Ironically, Israel regarded Marwan as the best agent ever.
He was the number one source of Israeli intelligence.
Few agents in the history provided such splendid information. Out of this world.
His death is a mystery. The rumor was it was a murder. And just the day before, he told me that he feared for his life. But who did it?
The Egyptian intelligence killed Ashraf Marwan because he was a traitor.
The Israelis believed that he was their man, but he tricked the Israelis into taking him seriously. He served Egypt well.
Ashraf Marwan's wife, Mona, she thought that he may have been murdered by the Israelis.
And when I think about it now, I'm still asking myself, was I responsible? I was the one who unmasked him to the world.
In 2007, on June the 27th, I got a phone call about the mysterious death that had happened just hours earlier. Of course, I'm intrigued. Who wouldn't be? And as a journalist, I wanted to get to the bottom of it. The most pressing immediate issue was, how did he die? Was it murder? Suicide? Was it an accident? So this is the place from which he fell. He fell 5 floors down. The family insisted that he had a whole set of plans, family functions to attend. He had a business meeting on that very day in that building there. That's why the family believed that there was just no truth to rumours that he could have killed himself. Wanted to get to the truth, but that turned out to be a lot trickier than I'd first imagined.
On the day he died, I was waiting for him to phone. I thought that something is wrong with the reception, so I went up the stairs to see whether or not he left me a message, but nothing. I have always been interested in Middle Eastern wars. When I was in the military, it was known there was a super spy who worked with Israel's Secret Intelligence Service. But the Israeli military censorship made sure that nothing is written about it. A great secret.
6 Arabs killed here in the West Bank, 7 in Gaza.
When the Palestinian uprising of 1987 started, was a turning point for me. I saw an Israeli soldier beating a Palestinian. I said, this is madness. You are inflicting on the Palestinians the same pain that other nations have inflicted on the Jews. And I'm not coming back until the violence stopped. Big deal, Aaron Bregman is not coming back. And I emigrate to the UK. After I finished my PhD on the Arab-Israeli conflict, I joined the Department of War Studies at King's College London. Have we discussed the spy here in class or not? Was it mentioned? Right. And I've published 6 books you know nothing about. It's a joke, don't use it.
I'm using that.
In 1998, I was a consultant on a major documentary, and I interviewed Director of Military Intelligence in Israel, General Eli Zeira. When we finished the interview, we were standing in the corridor, and what he said to me there changed everything for me. He said that the Mossad top spy was a double agent. I was shocked to the core.
What were the implications of the spy being a double?
If he was a double agent during one of the most important wars in Middle Eastern history, then all the intelligence the Israelis based their decisions on would be cast into doubt. Israel is dependent on her intelligence. They have to get it right always. And if the best spy misled them, it will just ruin the reputation. Therefore, the intelligence service,
Okay, Amos.
they have an interest
What was at risk? What was at stake?
in keeping the story intact.
It's a sensitive subject.
The young Bregman was uber motivated. A scoop like this was something I always dreamt about. But then I thought it might be a very dangerous game.
Ashraf Marwan was the son of an army general, and people see in that a sign of social seniority. He graduated in chemistry. At the same time, he he met Mona, daughter of Gamal Abdel Nasser, president in Egypt. They fell in love.
He knew how to jump to the good bed. He married the daughter of Nasser, the almighty Nasser. Nasser was like God for the Arabs. Idol. Nasser.
1967. This was a crisis moment for Nasser.
Israel crippled the Egyptian Air Force on the ground. And then Egypt lost the Sinai Peninsula. Egypt felt disbelief that this could happen to us. It was a dent in the dignity of the country. And the process of rebuilding the army started. For one objective, launching a war, regaining the Sinai, and regaining the sense of pride which every Egyptian felt before 1967.
Marwan entered into the Nasser family at this moment of crisis.
He wants to be important, but Nasser didn't entrust into him the kind of missions that Ashraf Marwan believed. Now, when I'm married into the family, I'll get them.
Nasser, he felt that this guy did not want to marry the girl for her personality. He wanted to marry the daughter of the president. So Nasser gave Ashraf Marwan that junior position in the presidency. It was like when you have adversary politician, you bring him close to keep him under your eye rather than leave him free to wreak havoc. Ashraf felt in a way demeaned, punished, and made him resent Nasser. So he came to London with his new wife. But reports back home indicated that he was loving an expensive lifestyle, nightclubs, restaurants, living beyond the means of the ordinary Egyptians.
Nasser lived a very frugal life, and he felt that it was highly embarrassing.
Nasser shunted them back to Cairo. Ashraf felt that he was handcuffed with Nasser.
So he wants to take revenge on his father-in-law.
Israel leaders call it the total destruction of Egypt's Sinai forces.
Immediately after the 6 days of 67, the issue of a possible war down the road with Egypt was the number one priority of the Mossad.
Every country, every government has to deal with the intentions of our enemies. And the more you know about it, the better you can prevent a war. So military intelligence for the Mossad was very, very important.
The Mossad is responsible for collection and special operation, this is not the CIA. CIA deals with all the world. Yes, agent in South America, in Africa, maybe in the Northern Pole, I don't know, all around the world. Here, in Israel, it is focused. The arch enemies.
Can you describe for me your job and your role when you were working in the field?
No, I prefer not.
So, 67. At that moment, we started to look for intelligence that would either support or the opposite. The issue of war down the road with Egypt.
Did you have any concerns about the possible implications of unmasking a spy?
Look, Tom, the Mossad could be very dangerous, and unmasking one of the spies could have endangered me. But I had to know. It was a risk. It was a gamble. I'm a bit reckless.
And what did your wife have to say about all this?
I knew that she would be unhappy to see me involved in such a thing. She was much more responsible and less reckless than me. So I told her nothing of my spy games. I pored over hundreds of articles and books looking for clues to see who he was. When I read anything that I could put my hands on, and then a key book came into my hand, which is the biography of Elizera, the man who said to me that there was a double agent who misled the Mossad. Zera writes about an unnamed spy. Then he mentioned 3 people who were sitting in a meeting in Riyadh: King Faisal of Saudi Arabia, Sadat, and a 3rd man. I was very suspicious when Zera did not mention the name of the 3rd man in a chapter where it's all about the spy. And you ask yourself, why is it missing?
So the fact that it was missing,
Yeah, exactly.
the fact that there was a missing piece of information.
It was an editing thing, you see. Why is it missing? So maybe the name is not mentioned because someone is trying to hide the name. But there is a reference, Robinson, page 136. 136. And here is the 3rd man, Dr. Ashraf Marwan. When I saw it, all my red lights started flashing. My gut was telling me that his name was significant, Ashraf Marwan. It was an educated guess. And I sent a fax to Zera, hoping that he will react and confirm the name. I took a punt. But his reply was, I will not reveal. And this was a setback. But I wonder if there was something in the fact Zera did not deny. So I thought that maybe I'm on the right track.
And refused to negotiate until they were removed. This was the position when the Arab world was dealt a blow from which it's still reeling.
Now, the explosive situation in the Middle East has been further complicated by the unexpected death of Egypt's President Nasser.
This man, Anwar Sadat, took over as president-elect.
the big bosses and the Nasser regime, they were unsatisfied with Sadat. There was a kind of rebellion. And Ashraf was very cunning, smart.
Somehow, Marwan got his hands on archive and turned it over to Sadat, and Sadat used some of the information in that archive to put his enemies on trial. It was very consequential in Marwan's future career to prove to Sadat his loyalty to him can come at the price of stabbing in the back Nasser's closest aides.
And Sadat rewarded it. He appointed Ashraf to be the secretary of the presidential office.
He was part of Sadat's inner circle.
At the time, he was not 30 yet. And that is the youngest man in the job ever. But knowing Ashraf Marwan, every step is calculated to build for what comes after.
I was pretty sure Ashraf Marwan was the spy. But I needed a confirmation. So I thought that perhaps the editor of Zira's book, Rami Tal, could help with the name of the spy. Obviously, the editor discussed the matter with Zira, so I devised a plan. I then took a flight to Tel Aviv.
Ronnie Bregman, he wants to make sure that he has the right name. I knew the name, but I told him, Ronnie, I don't know the name, but if I knew it, I would not tell you. I don't know the name, don't nag me. This was how it was done.
10 minutes into the conversation, when he was warm up but not yet tired of me, I looked him straight in the eye.
And Ronnie said, I know the name of the super spy. And I said, good for you. And he said,
Ashraf Marwan was the super spy.
I was taken aback.
His response was unmistakable.
As far as I remember, I did not acknowledge it.
He looked away and smiled. Bingo.
How do you say, the English said, that butter would not melt in my mouth. Butter very much melts in my mouth. So when he approached me with the name, it was some kind of an acknowledgement.
I returned to London a happy man. I had the name. I was delighted, really, celebrating. But I had to confirm that he was a double agent.
Okay, so how did the Mossad get involved with Ashraf Marwan?
He was a walk-in.
One day in London, he decided to call the Israeli embassy. This is how moments in history are made. They are made out of pure luck. Because when he called the embassy, luckily enough, the head of Mossad stations in Europe, Shmuel Goren, was visiting the station.
והייתי אחראי על העבודה הזו באירופה. מצלצל אדם, שמעתי את השם, והשם מיד קפץ לי, אבל לא אמרתי, זה לא יכול להיות. אחד כזה שיבוא אלינו.
When recruiting a new agent, what are the risks to you, to the Mossad?
To the Mossad, first, that he might be a double agent. Number two, he's a liar. And number three, that he can surrender you, and which is very dangerous.
But being an intelligence officer, if you are not suspicious as part of your culture and character, you stand a fair chance not to be a successful intelligence officer. And in the case of Hawkins, it is even more important to be suspicious.
But he said the son-in-law of the Egyptian president is a walk-in. We cannot miss that opportunity.
זה היה הימור. מקרים האלה זה בין צלש וטרש. את יודעת לתרגם את זה לאנגלית? אני לא יודע. את הפגישה ואילתרנו וקבענו את הפגישה בבית מלון באותו יום. כלומר, נושא השיחה היה קצר. המסמכים היו פרוטוקולים אותנטיים של שיחות עם הרוסים, ששם משלחות בדרג הכי גבוה המצרי במוסקבה, יחד עם הדרג הכי גבוה הרוסי, שלהיות זבוב על הקיר שמתנהלים פגישות כאלה, זה חלום של כל איש מודיעין.
My task was to go over the material he provided, and we couldn't find anything which gave us any doubt about his credibility.
Okay, so what exactly did you do to be certain?
Listen, there's no point to get into all the details, but there was no one case where anybody said explicitly, a very determined way, that he was not authentic.
Why would Marwan, now that Nasser was gone, if his ambition was being fulfilled, he was the right-hand man of the president, why would he want to sell secrets to Israel?
Why did he do it? To feel important, maybe to take revenge on his father-in-law, and thirdly, financial reward. All in all, the Mossad paid him $1 million in the 70s, early 70s. It's a huge amount of money.
Everything the Israelis say suggests it was resentment towards Nasser, hubris, money, and that doesn't add up to me.
You have to look at the Ashraf Marwan angle. I am a big shot.
How did Marwan's spying for you work exactly?
He accompanied Sadat to meetings with leaders. He listened and was able to give us the inside information.
When the Mossad met with Marwan, the meeting would take place in London. Marwan would provide his documents. He would get his money, then he will leave first, and the Israeli will leave after him.
What was so valuable about the information he gave you?
The most important pieces of information which Ashraf Marwan gave Israel, he brought the order of battle of the Egyptian army. It means that Israel would know how Egypt would going to strike. And they would attack us only if they have enough air cover provided by the Russians.
אני אומר לכם את זה עוד פעם ועוד פעם, כי זה היה מהבחינה המקצועית זו הייתה רעידת אדמה.
It was beautiful, beautiful, really.
Tried to piece together really what happened to Ashraf Marwan. Was it murder? Was it suicide? It is very interesting to be here. He was on this balcony here, and he landed in these bushes. The family had always said that the trajectory of his fall was such that he fell away from the building, such an extent that he must have been thrown. You can only really see it when you're in the garden. You can start to see why the family were arguing. It was bizarre that he landed several feet out into these bushes. And when I spoke to Ashraf Marwan's wife, Mona, she thought that he may have been murdered by the Israelis. Based on this information, it was difficult to believe that he had just fallen out as part of an accident.
I gathered a huge amount of data during my research. This is Eli Zera, and he was young. He was a good-looking man, very clever, very clever. I had the head of Israeli military intelligence telling me this spy was a double agent. This could only make Israeli intelligence look bad. So I had to take notice of it. And then I uncovered something big behind the meetings in London. Marwan was reckless. He would just do stupid things, take chances. He would phone the Israelis, the embassy, directly, ignoring the careful system whereby he should phone them indirectly using a third party, a lady in London. Of course, all the lines could have been taped by other agencies, by the MI6. And he would arrive in meetings driving the car of the Egyptian embassy in London. The fact that Marwan was so confident to do such things in the open perhaps points to the fact that he knew that it's okay. He was a double agent and the Egyptians will accept it. So my conclusion is that General Eli Zera was correct. The spy was a double agent.
Ronnie, I've spoken to the Mossad, and what they're telling me is pretty compelling.
I think that Ashraf Marwan was not the person the Israelis thought he was.
Sound? Ready?
Yeah.
Abdallah, Israel believe Ashraf gave them everything.
Good for them. Ashraf Marwan, I believe that he served Egypt well. He did it under instructions from Sadat. He did not do it out of his own free will, albeit he was prepared to play the dangerous game.
When Sadat became president of Egypt, his first priority was to get back the lands Egypt lost in 1967.
It was a holistic movement within the country, everyone coming together for one objective: launching a war, regaining the Sinai, revitalizing the Arab world, and creating a new spirit for the future. But knowing that the Israelis had weapons from the United States and Western countries, it had to have some cunning in the plan. And Sadat has played this in the most perfect way. Sadat wanted a very convincing agent to feed information to the Israelis, and Ashraf Marwan was the best actor to play the part. Everything was like staged, managed to the highest possible standard. They studied very well the Israeli mentality to create the image to fool the Israelis. And he did not go to them on his knees. He went to them full of himself.
The Ashraf Marwan angle.
Playboy, fun-loving, with a sense of pride.
I am a big shot.
And he was very successful in convincing them that he is serious about working for them. Ashraf Marwan supplied the Israelis with the Egyptian preparation for the war, but not complete. But the Israelis were very happy with what he gave them, so he was accepted.
החומר שקיבלנו, אני הגדרתי אותו שהוא מגיע פעם ב-1000 שנה.
And they call him the agent of the century. All under instructions from Sadat.
There's this double agent theory. I would like your opinion.
אף מדינה בעולם שחומר כזה יגיע לידי האויבים שלה.
He's a traitor. He's just a simple traitor. That's it.
How did the information that Marwan gave you influence your thinking?
Marwan, he reported one of the conditions for going to war was long-range bombers. And the Russians, they hesitated to provide the Egyptians deep bombing capabilities. So the Israeli evaluators of the intelligence were in the notion that they are not going to fight us.
The underlying message of all the information given by Marwan was that Egypt will not attack before she got certain weapons. But what the Israelis didn't know was that Sadat decided to go to war against them even without the weapons. What Sadat needed was to surprise the Israelis, to catch them unprepared. The key issue was how to surprise the Israelis. And Egypt felt the right time is to attack them on Yom Kippur, which is a holy day in Israel, when the Israelis don't listen to radio, television is off, they are just insulated in the synagogues and in the houses.
On the 6th of October 1973, the Egyptian units on the ground were told, now.
100,000 Egyptian troops start crossing the Suez Canal.
Igniting their spirit and mind and the will to win.
On the other side, there are only 452 Israeli soldiers. The Israelis are caught unprepared, off-balanced.
Did succeed in crushing the myth of Israel's invincibility, and the first Israeli surrenders were moments of rare triumph for the Egyptian commanders.
The Egyptian surprise was very successful.
מפוצץ, מלא אנשים, כל המקומות היה 12 בצהריים, התחלנו לראות תנועה של רכבים, באו הצבא, לקחו אותם מפה, הם עלו לרכבים של הצבא. יכול לבוא להגיד לך, בסך הכל היה תוהו ובוהו.
I was mobilized, recruited. Then I headed to Sinai. We believe that the Israeli army is invincible and the Arabs are inferior and that it would be a stroll in the park. But we realized that actually it's not a joke.
Bombarded from the air. We were bombarded from the land. We fought almost face to face with Egyptian soldiers. They were good fighters. I saw people dying around me. I was frightened all the time. You think that this is the end.
Took 5 kilometers of Sinai, and they dug in and they rebuffed everything.
And actually, our defense minister, Dayan, came out on television and talked to the nation and explained to us that the situation is bad indeed.
המלחמה הזאת קשה, התנגשויות חריפות ומרירות, שריון ואוויר.
He looked down and said,
ואנחנו נלחמים על חיינו.
Us fighting for our life, we were the heroes in 1967. What happened now? So him on television was a difficult moment in Israel.
When the war was over, the Egyptian people were extremely happy. Can I tell you something which not many people know? During the 1973 war days, the rate of crime dwindled to zero. There was no crime, no at all. Everyone united with everyone. The one goal they had was to regain their sense of pride and dignity. Ashraf Marwan, he enabled Egypt to gain the surprise advantage.
The Egyptians are adamant they got the jump on you in 73 because Ashraf Marwan misled you.
But it's just the opposite. They didn't surprise us. They gave us an early alert. Before the war, Ashraf Marwan, he asked for a meeting.
Gave the code words, chemicals. And he told him, tomorrow I'll be in London. I want Zvika Zamir, the director of the Mossad, to come. The meeting took place at about 10 o'clock p.m. Zvika sat scribbling the essence of the story.
Ashraf won. He said tomorrow the war would be at sunset.
Zvika, he sent early warning to his personal assistant. It was disseminated to the director of military intelligence.
We could prepare ourselves for the attack. Ashraf, he gave the plan.
Wait a second. Ashraf said the war would start at sunset, and yet the surprise attack was at 2. Wasn't that misleading?
I'll answer. See, I saw the full report. The Syrians, they wanted the attack to be in the morning. In October the 2nd, the Egyptian Minister of War reached a compromise. Okay, not sunset, 10 minutes to 2 o'clock afternoon. Marwan, he didn't know about the change because he was not in Egypt. He went on a mission.
There are those who say that Marwan did not know that war would start 4 hours earlier. I don't buy it. I think that he was just too close to the leadership not to know such fact. And the fact that he said that it will start at sunset was the climax of him misleading the Mossad and Israel. But Mossad agents have very clear motivation to tell the world that he was genuine. So I was convinced Ashraf Marwan misled the Israelis. Now I wanted to write a book about him. But without a confirmation, I couldn't just blame someone of being a spy or a double agent. And I wanted to hear it from Ashraf. I wanted to hear the story from him. So I published the history of Israel. I wanted to tease Ashraf out. So I wrote in the book, without mentioning his name, that he was a close family member of President Nasser, and that the Israelis used to refer to him as the son-in-law. By the way, the Israelis never called him the son-in-law. This was my invention in order for him to react. I sent him the book with a dedication to Ashraf Marwan, a hero of Egypt. But no response. This is, by the way, Tommy, a very boring book, except for this story. Yeah. Then a breakthrough. An Egyptian journalist contacted Ashraf Marwan, asking him, "Are you the person at the heart of Bregman's story?" To which he responded, "Bregman's book is a stupid detective story." In a childish sort of way, I was upset. So when another Egyptian journalist contacted me, I confirmed Ashraf Marwan, he was the son-in-law, a perfect spy, an Egyptian national hero, for misleading Israel, and they should name a street after him in Cairo. I was obsessed with it, and if you have something so important and you don't tell your wife, I'm sure it does have an impact on the relationship. A few weeks later, I picked up a copy of El Aram El Arabi. Oh, that's the interview. A perfect spy and a national hero, Ashraf Marwan. And it caused a huge stir in the Middle East. The agent is exposed. I saw my picture in the book and my heart sank. It was quite shocking for me. I wondered what would be the reaction of Marwan, of the Egyptians, of the Mossad. It was very worrying. The next day, I'm in the garden. Through the window, I can see my wife banging. "You have a telephone call." I pick up the phone and someone says, "How are you?" It's Arabic accent. "And who are you?" I ask. "I am the person you've written about." I'm taken aback. He says, "We should meet up." I was about to meet up with one of the greatest spies in modern history. Quite a dangerous exercise. So I was concerned. I took some precautions. I left a message to my wife saying, "I'm meeting Ashraf Marwan." I walked to the Intercontinental Hotel, looking back from time to time. He was already there. I've never seen him before, and I was quite surprised to see how tall he was. Well dressed, with a scarf, a red scarf, pacing up and down. And although we never met before, we immediately recognized each other. "How are you?" I ask. "I'm ill," he says. "I just had a few operations." We ordered coffees, and when the coffee did not come to our table, he got up and went and fetched it for us, which was a big mistake. He could have put something inside. This was my only mistake in the meeting. I said to him, I had one big question I wanted to ask him. "Why did you say sunset?" Because the war started at 2 p.m. He smiled and said, "What are a few hours between us?" Bingo! This was a real admission that he was misleading Israel. But then he added that he's concerned about his safety. And it was left at that. It was amazing, and I was very happy to be alive. General Eli Zeira was correct. The mysterious spy who worked for Israel was a double agent.
This is bullshit.
Tell me
Well,
what you
he's
really-
wrong.
Tell me what you really think.
I think Ronnie is wrong. What Eli Zeira was doing was spreading fake news 4 decades before Trump came to power and invented that term.
This was the day when Israel mourned her dead. The latest casualty figures, 1,854 killed.
על גודל ההפתעה הפתיע אותי, זה דבר שרודף אחריי עד עצם היום הזה. בטח, יש לי כעס. אם יש לנו אחד כמו מרואן, שאמר לנו והתריע יום לפני כן, גייס כמה מילואים ולהראות, היה פאק אחד גדול בתוך כל המודיעין. בטח שיש לי כעס, כעס מאוד.
After the war, there was an inquiry committee for the failure of the military intelligence.
It was the responsibility of the head of the military intelligence, General Zeira, to give the alert, and he did not.
Eli Zeira, when he was asked why you didn't do anything with such tremendous early warning, he said, I didn't want to bother the chief of staff. He was busy, really.
Because Eli Zeira, he thought they would attack us only if they have enough air cover provided by the Russians. And the air cover is not yet ready. Eli Zeira didn't believe Ashraf Marwan warnings.
The inquiry committee, they concluded Eli Zeira bore the main responsibility for the failure in the war. Eli Zeira was ousted from active service. And he left the country. He went with his family to the US. About 13 years after the war, Eli published his book. He came to the conclusion that Marwan was a double agent and his real employers were the Egyptians and not the Israelis.
Eli Zeira, he wanted to find a scapegoat. All the stories about the double agent, it stems from Eli Zeira. He wanted to justify himself. I'm furious about him. What can I do?
I actually spoke to Zeira yesterday. Zeira said all these facts.
So, what do you want to prove? I'll throw it away.
He said on October 4th, at early afternoon, the Soviets started...
Listen, can you stop here? I'll tell you off.
When Zeira wanted to rehabilitate himself, he started talking to journalists, writers, and he gave them some hints. One day he asked me for a meeting. He tried to feed me also with this false bullshit of double agent. I listened to him and I told him, Eli, you are wrong. You're feeding false information just for your prize, hubris, ego, whatever. And I didn't write the story because I have more integrity. But why to kill a good story with the facts? And Ronnie Bregman believed Eli Zeira, published the name in El Aran, and spread he was a double agent.
About a month after the murder, there was a major development. There were 3 witnesses, and they were sitting in a room which overlooked the balcony, just 20 yards from his home. So I presume witness Joseph Rapassi would have been sitting here because he had the direct view of the balcony. He saw from the corner of his eye something fall. But they then rushed over to the window, looked down and could see Ashraf Marwan's body. And it was then that he saw 2 shadowy figures, Middle Eastern appearance, looking over the balcony. I flew to Hungary and met Rapassi in Budapest, and he did confirm to me that that was his story, which of course deepened the mystery. At the time it was a major development because it looked as if it could be, if they were people of Middle Eastern appearance, maybe they could be Egyptian secret services. And it did fuel speculation about who had possibly killed him.
After the meeting in the Intercontinental Hotel in London, Ashraf, he would phone from time to time. I think he was lonely. He could not have discussed it with Mona, his wife. He could not have discussed his spy games with his kids or friends. So ironically, he had me, the person who exposed him in the first place. Ashraf had strange habits. He would phone me and keep quiet, listening to my voice at the other end of the line, putting down the phone, ring again, and start a conversation. The more Ashraf asked personal questions about family and kids, the more concerned I became for him. Because as long as he was the son-in-law with no face, I did not care about him as a human being. But now I had a relationship with him. I knew about his operations, about the family, about the kids. That I became very worried that something might happen to him, that perhaps the Egyptians will not buy into my story of him being the perfect spy, the double agent, and they will try to hurt him. Or perhaps the Mossad might do a stupid thing. I spent sleepless nights concerned about what could happen. I thought that if anything happened to him, it would be on my conscience. And ironically, from trying to unmask this super spy, I started looking for ways to protect him. Anything which was said about him, to report to him so he could take precautions. All my work, my lectures, my writing, my family, all was put aside. He became the first priority. By that time, I was so worried that something will happen to him that I would just look for anything written about him. And he would get the articles and usually just phone back and ask a few questions because most of them were in Hebrew. On one occasion, something was published in Israel. The article is about Ashraf Marwan shaking hands with Egypt's President Mubarak. And the title is "Their Man, There is Mossad's Man in Cairo." And why did Mubarak hug the person who is regarded as the best Mossad agent in Egypt? I thought the Egyptians might want to have revenge. I sent it to Ashraf, and when he got it, he phoned me from a taxi. And he just shouted and actually cried, "Why are they doing it to me?" They, the Mossad, is trying to drive a wedge between me and Mubarak. And this is their revenge for me misleading them. He was so upset that even I became very upset.
You think he was upset because Israel's story was a lie?
Yes. And then he said there was no one spy. We were a group of 40 people whose task it was to feed the Israelis. There was no single double agent. There was Egypt. He told me about the medals he received from Sadat. Wow, it was huge. Couldn't believe it. But he was scared. He told me he feared for his life. And I just realized what a stupid thing it was to unmask a living spy.
But Ronnie, you told me that the higher value of unmasking Marwan was about staying true to history and having an accurate record of what happened.
The truth of the matter. When I unmasked Marwan, I couldn't care less about history. I just cared about a huge scoop that I had. He wanted, as he put it, the story to die.
בואו נפתח עוד פרק בשיחה הזאת שהופכת בעצם למסמך. אשרף מרואן, דוקטור אשרף מרואן. ואתה חושב שהוא סוכן כפול. כן. אבל כל מי שבדק את העניין אומר, לא דובים ולא יער. הוא לא סוכן כפול, הוא היה סוכן שלנו.
Zeira published a new version of his book. And to promote the book, he went to a television studio and he said,
בקשר למרואן, הוא נתן חומר מצוין, ועד אשר הגיע זמן המלחמה, ואז הוא דפק אותנו לגמרי.
הרעיון שהעניק האלוף אלי זעירה, כאן במוסף המוספים על מלחמת יום הכיפורים, גרם לרעש אדמה בקהיליית המודיעין. ראש המוסד, האלוף צבי זמיר, משיב לו.
Zamir called him a liar. You lie.
הוא צנזור של הידיעות. הוא משחרר ידיעות שהן תואמות את החשיבה, אתה יודע מה, החולנית שלו.
So, Zeira took him to court for libel. So, Zamir countered by taking Zeira to court for libel. So, there were two libel cases. The Mossad realized that it's getting out of hand. These two elderly gentlemen, which were compared to those who are sitting on the balcony in the Muppet Show, quarreling and spilling secrets. So the Mossad said, let's go to arbitration.
I was invited to the arbitration by General Eli Zeira, who paid for my flight ticket, by the way. Zeira wanted me to tell the judge that he was not my source, which was correct. But the judge asked me about Zeira's book, to which I said, yes, it was an important source. The lawyer of the head of the Mossad took out this book and waved it in the air. I understood that it was a big mistake to admit that the book was my source, because for the judge, the book and Zeira were basically the same. So stupid to be brought there all the way from London to give testimony to protect Zeira, and in fact I was the one who put indirectly the blame on Zeira by saying that his book was one of my most important sources. It was very embarrassing, in fact.
After all that?
Yeah. Terrible.
It's amazing.
It's not amazing, Tommy. It's terrible. Everyone thinks that I'm clever. I was so stupid. And Zeira lost. And then came a big mistake. The judge wrote a report where openly he stated that Ashraf Marwan was a Mossad agent. This is the report of the judge. Zeira versus Zamir. Here, look, Ashraf's name is mentioned many times, which was terrible. Here, they say there was a top agent who was handled by the Mossad, the agent, or Marwan. They expose his name here. So he is mentioned in this report so many times. As long as a historian, Aaron Bregman, said what he said about Marwan, this was bad but not the end of the world. But the moment a judge says the agent, Marwan, this was official. When I saw the report online, I nearly fell off my chair. His life was in a real danger. I sent a fax message to Ashraf Marwan to phone me. I collected my son, put him in front of the television. The telephone answering machine was flashing.
Message received today at 1:52 p.m.
I was taken aback when I heard Ashraf's own voice.
Hello, hi. I'm about your book. If you can call me back in my mobile. Thank you.
It was very unusual. Ashraf was a real spy. Spies don't leave messages. And then a second message.
Please. Hello, can you call me about your book? Thank you.
To return the call using the...
I could see that he was under pressure.
Please. Hello, can you call me about your book? Thank you.
Almost one after the other.
Message received today at 3:11 p.m.
Hello, hi, good afternoon. You can call me. I have the subtitle book. Thank you.
To listen to the message you
I've known him for 5 years. This was the first time that he left messages on my answering machine. I took out my old tape recorder. I, for the first time, decided to record the conversation. I dialed the number. My finger was shaking. He picked up the phone.
Hello, my friend. I'm okay, and how are you? Yes, sure, absolutely. Yes. Yes, absolutely, yes. Bye-bye.
He asked me to phone him again. Put it down.
And 2 minutes later.
I'm talking to myself. 2 minutes later. And he's not answering. This was strange. I was very concerned that he said to me, phone me again, and then I tried again. So something is happening in the room when I'm talking to him. You see, I'm waiting for him.
And 2 minutes later. Third time.
What's happening in the room? He's there. You know, I phoned him, he said, phone me again. I'm trying and trying and trying.
Hi, hello. No, don't worry. So, the report of the judge came out, and there are details there. This is the bottom line.
Ashraf wanted the story to die. What he gets here is a report from me that his story is very much alive, and I'm sure that he's very stressed. I'm sure that he's very worried. It's awful for him.
Are you in England? Tomorrow I will be in town. I will be at King's College. If you want to meet, we can meet, but it's up to you. Okay, my friend, all the best. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
I'm shaking.
This is one of the rare events where people pay with their lives. He paid with his life, and he didn't deserve it.
After the death of Ashraf Marwan, Ronnie was in shock.
I felt big pain. It was very painful when he died. I spent hours in the mountains thinking about it, reflecting about it. His death was my failure to protect him. This is how I looked at it.
I flew to interview Ronnie Bregman. We had a very lengthy conversation. He said, maybe it's my fault. Then we talked a lot in details with all these arguments which I raised before. And at the end of it, Ronnie told me, you know, Yossi, you are right. I don't believe anymore that he was a double agent. You convinced me.
סביב אלי הצטברו עיתונאים, גם ביניהם היסטוריון אחד. אתה שואל אותי, אני לא אומר את זה בשום מקום, אנשים מאוסים. למה? כי הם סילפו את העובדות.
He had a funeral. They asked me, okay, he got such an Egypt funeral with all the leadership coming with black suit. His widow stand there, all the high echelon passed by her, kissing her or whispering. They asked me, how could it be that this is a traitor? I watched many mafia movies. When the mafia killed one of their members, all the dons are passing by the widow, whispering, we will give you money, we will give you money. The funeral of Ashraf Marwan reminds me the same.
This is Westminster Coroner Court, where there was a 3-day hearing to decide a verdict on the death of Ashraf Marwan. During the inquest was mentioned he had been writing his memoirs. I had seen where the memoirs were supposed to be stored on the shelf, and they disappeared, according to the family, on the day that he died. Now, in those memoirs, he was expected to discuss his role in the October War. Of course, it was going to reject the allegation that he was a Mossad agent, but they disappeared, according to the family.
The Marwan family, through their lawyer, asked me to appear before the coroner. I was sitting where the coroner listened to the testimonies, and it was quite confusing. And my mind was telling me, wow, it was a murder. And a minute later, no, it was an accident. And then, no, it was a suicide. And to sit there with the family, back of my mind, there was the question, what was my responsibility? It was a very unpleasant experience.
There was a 3-day hearing to decide, and at the end of it, the coroner handed down an open verdict on his death. Which the family were very pleased with, because it allowed the family to rule out suicide. I did feel for Mona, she was devastated.
مدام منى، أصعب لحظة شفتيها في حياتك كانت إمتى؟
هما لحظتين، وفاة والدي وفاة 3، وفاة أمي ووفاة أشرف. بس في النهاية أنا كزوجة فقدته هو، وفي ذات نفس الأوقات أحس إن أنا فقدته وكده، وأوقات أحمد ربنا إني قدرت أنفذ بيه 30 سنة.
يعني إذا كان على صلة أو على اتصال بإسرائيل فده كان بتعليمات من مصر.
يعني ده شيء ما يتسألش، لأنه شيء باين زي يعني حتى واضح. يعني أنا مش هدافع عن حاجة مش مستاهلة الدفاع ولا حاجة، لأن أنا ده شيء أنا واثقة منه 100%، مش 100%. يعني كل واحد جاهد بطريقته.
Ashraf Marwan in Egypt is regarded as a patriot who worked for Sadat to deceive the Israelis, basically by giving Egypt a 4-hour lead in the 1973 war. But Israel regard him as a national hero.
כפול זה מאוד קשה להאמין. לדעתי, הוא היה סוכן שלנו.
The Israeli side of things is supported by evidence. The Egyptian side has yet to present its own record. And only when both of them are available can we decide which is the more authentic version of the story.
The question is, why is the Egyptian intelligence services 50 years down the line not releasing any shred of evidence about Ashraf Marwan? The fact that we do not have any evidence is really not about Ashraf Marwan. It is about the fact that if the Egyptians release any documents, it will establish a precedent that the public can have a say on how the Egyptian state should be transparent, that it should be accountable. And the Egyptian state doesn't want to establish this precedent at all. Even though by not revealing anything about Ashraf Marwan, it can be still raising the suspicion that in fact he was an Israeli spy rather than a double agent. The Ashraf Marwan story, this is not the real story. This is a side story of something that is much bigger. The Egyptian people, they want to know the truth.
We have the full report of the meeting between Zamir and Ashraf Marwan, just released by the Israelis. There are 5 pages, enough information for the 2 schools of thought to find enough elements to support their own theory. I always believed Ashraf was a double agent. Never doubted that.
I don't understand why he's still sticking to this bullshit theory of a double agent. I can understand that maybe at the beginning he was under the spell and the impression of Elizera. Fine. But then, after he already admitted in our conversation, he was almost crying. I don't know, it's an enigma for me.
Yossi told me that he convinced you Ashraf was not a double agent.
I don't think that this was the case. Yossi believes in what he believes, along with the Mossad, the truth. It's in the eye of the beholder.
The fact that he is not ready to face the real story and to have the courage and the guts to say, I was mistaken, it's his problem with his conscience.
Unmask the name of a human source, it's a sin.
What would you say to him?
Go to hell, bastard. Really, go to hell, bastard. How dare you?
Because you don't put in danger a human being because you want to be famous.
When it comes to the story of Ashraf Marwan, there is no ego in me. The Mossad, they can't give up on their story of Ashraf. And when I'm in bed at night, as you put it, I don't really think about whether or not he was double. I lost interest in this question, Tommy. It's about the pain which I inflicted on him in unmasking him.
I just want you to ponder a question though. Is still believing that he's a double agent, is it not easier to believe that? Because then everything that you went through would at least then not be for nothing. What impact did this have on your marriage?
Of course, I divorced, but it was not because of the Marwan story. But I think, in hindsight, it does have impact because it's a secret. My then wife, when she came to know about it, she had the common sense to tell me that it will end in tears. But it was, of course, was too late. And by that time, the train already left the station. And then your fish, they want to have more food. I'm looking for food. My fish, if I open this one, they jump.
Do they?
Yeah. They are guppies. You know, guppies like to jump. But with them, they jump, and I can save them. Because I just bring them from the floor and pull them back. Look how many of them.
This afternoon, historic documents concluding the Treaty of Peace between the Arab Republic of Egypt and the State of Israel will be signed.
Let us have three of us together.
Very good.
I'm so proud of both of you. God bless you both. Allah.